Right, so I'm going to move on to the tailored collar, which is this example here. Winifred Aldrich calls it the classic gents collar. She does have tailored in brackets. So it's page 161. There is 2 diagrams here on this page. So diagram 17, diagram 18, we're doing diagram 17. So we have our flat drawing there for 17. Have a look at it. You can compare it to the flat drawing 18. You can see that the lapel and shape of this collar on 18 is different. You can also see that it's double-breasted. So if you were kind of going to do a double-breasted garment, you might want to be looking more at this as your starting point. And it's nice to see examples of how you can change the shape of this area, the collar, the lapel, and the angles at the ends of them. So we're going to start here. There is a small error in her book just straight away. It's not too bad, but her first line, she says, trace around the front bodice, which I have here. Again, this could be your jacket block, a coat block, men's, women's, children's, whichever it would be. So trace around the bodice block required. Trace the front neck 0.5 centimeters. Raise the front neck 0.5 centimeters. So she says raise the front neck 0.5 centimeters, and then her next sentence is kind of a repeat. She says mark 0.5 centimeters above the front neck point. So that's the same instruction, kind of given in 2 different ways. So raising it 0.5. So first of all, we have to know where our neck point is, which is this point, and we're raising it 0.5. So a half a centimeter there. They're all full scale measurements that I'm going to write on the board. The next line, she says, rub out the existing neckline, which is tricky because you know I don't love to rub out lines. So I'm going to leave mine there for the time being, okay, for reference point, but at the end I probably do rub it out. I just don't rub it out straight away. So this is our neckline that we've gotten from our block. We are going to create a new neckline for this collar. It's going to look different. It's going to have a kind of angle, you know. So she doesn't have, because she's told you to rub out the neckline, she doesn't have the curved neckline represented there in her diagram of the pattern. So just in case that confuses you, see the way the dark line is like a straight line, an angle, and then long like that? That is now our neckline.
So did we draw in that line?
Not yet.
Oh.
Yeah. So we won't get that till towards the end of the draft. So that's why I don't like to kind of maybe erase this straight away. I'll see when I erase it, but for the moment, I'm going to leave it there. And eventually towards the end, we'll get those 2 lines, which will be our new neckline. So mark in buttonhole and button stand. So a button stand, I'm going to again add 2 centimeter button stand, full scale. So button stand, again, remember the other term is button allowance. Amount would depend on the size of the button. And in this case, we're doing 2, so we're giving it kind of a larger, assuming there's kind of a larger button going there. Mark 2 at the shoulder point. So position 2 is our shoulder point there. So in the circle, the number in the circle is the position. The other numbers are the measurements. All right, extend the shoulder line. A 2 to 3 is 2 centimeters along the line. So extend the shoulder line. When she says something like that, you need to look at the diagram, because which way is she talking about? You look here and you can see there's a dotted line coming from the shoulder in this direction. So that's what she means. Extend it in that direction. And then we're going to measure on it. The next set of instructions is 2 to 3. You look for those position points on the diagram. You can see it's along that line we've just extended, and she's given you a given measurement, 2 centimeters. So here I am extending the line, and then I'm measuring 2 centimeters along, and that position that I've just pushed is position 3. Mark 4 at the break point, she says. So the break point is the position we decide for the bottom of the lapel. In this case, this can be moved, as we know, and changed as per design, but in this case we are trying to design this, or pattern draft for this design, 17. It's actually quite high, it's not particularly low lapel. So you can look, say, where the bust dart is there. Now that dart would be pulled back from the exact point, but you know, it's higher than this point a little bit.
Yeah? That's marked.
Typically across from your break point, the button it is. Do you see? You've got your lapel, and where the break point is, the button usually is just below it. Now that isn't always the case. I can show you several examples where that isn't the case, but I think it's better to do it that way, especially when you're a beginner and you're not professional at your pressing, because this holds its position by being pressed, but also the button kind of helps it hold that position. So if you have someone professionally pressing, they might have it might be like 4 centimeters up from that button, and it's held really well. But I think when you're learning about pressing and, you know, getting things situated, it's advisable to put your button at that break point. Holds it better. So the break point, I've just gone, haven't measured or anything, I've just by eye gone, I think around there is good. So join 4 to 3 with a dotted line, she says, and extend that line. This is position 4. We're going up to 3. That is our break line. But it doesn't matter to me if you want to dot it. We've gone from 4 to 3, and we've gone up, because we're going to use this. From here, it's going to be a construction line. We're going to measure from this, and we're going to get our angles and various other things. So from here up, it's the construction line. So her next instruction says 3 to 5 is a back neck measurement plus 1. So 3, we look on our diagram, we look from 3 up to 5, so that means that we're going on this line we've just drawn, this extended line, and she's telling us that measurement to get up to 5 is our back neck measurement plus 1 centimeter, so not to forget that. So we have to go with our measuring tape and measure this back neckline here, and place that measurement, add 1 centimeter, and come up that amount there. So if our back neck is 8, we add 1 and add. So my back neck is, say, 7.5. I'm going to add 1, that makes it 8.5, and I'm coming up that amount. So 5 to 6 is 2 centimeters, and then square a line across at right angles to line 6 to 3. So we do one thing at a time. 5 to 6 is 2 centimeters, so let's do that first. So
and that's going backwards, isn't it?
yeah, go in this direction. 2 centimeters. Position 6. This line needs to be equal length to this line here. So I might have squared just a bit prematurely. We need to be sure. So if we measure that, she has that in brackets. So for me, that was 8.5. I've got to put 8.5 on this new angled line, which is only it is only a fraction lower, but the steps we did before are now like irrelevant, you know? So this was a line we squared up and we measured on all that, but it was construction line. Our new positions now in green are what we want to focus on. So this can be challenging with drafting, because each time we draw a line and we measure from it, you kind of have to try and erase the other lines in your head, or and no, they were just the kind of scaffolding. They were like the first thing that got us our other line. Now we need to concentrate on this green line. It is nice to have the colors. Like if her book was color coded, it would be even more helpful. 6 to 7 is 3 centimeters. So 6 to 7, we look on here, is going this way, it's 3 centimeters, and 6 to 8 is 5 centimeters going that way. So that's going to give us our 8 centimeters. That is the back of the collar here. That's this that we're working on right now. And it's at 8 centimeters in total. So we've got 3 to our roll line where it rolls over, and then 5 coming down in this particular draft. Coming back 3 this way and 5 this way. So draw a new bodice neckline. Draw a line from point 2 parallel to break line. So we have to come up and look. So 2 is positioned here, and she's telling you to draw it in parallel. So yeah, so that first instruction is kind of saying draw the new neckline, and then she gives you the instruction for that below, because it's a bit of a cliffhanger, draw a new bodice neckline, but then she doesn't say anything. So the next instruction helps you get one part of the new neckline, and the following one gets the second. So drawing a line from point 2 parallel to our break line. So here's our break line, so we have to know what our break line is. Okay, so that's my break line. I'm drawing in a parallel line to it. So remember, she told us to erase this line. This is the point where I'm going to erase it. My neckline is gone. I'm now making a parallel line here. I'm making a new neckline. So if I come out parallel here, I'm just drawing a parallel line, okay? Now, length isn't determined yet, so just draw a little line. We'll get the length in a sec. So now, there is the start of my neckline. It's parallel to the break line here. Now I need to get this angle. Again, this angle is somewhat changeable. She's giving us a standard, but that angle, that is this angle here, do you know? So it can change a bit, and it can be lower. You can drop this whole point here, so these can change a bit. But she's giving us some standardized measurements, which is a very good, helpful starting point. So we've done that first bit. She says position 9, which you can see as the bottom of the line, because I said I didn't know where to stop the line. So now 9, she's given us this, is 1.5 centimeters up from the line squared across from 1. That first position, when we came up that 0.5 there, is position 1. So square across from 1.
Using the center front line to square across from?
Yes. So you would always square from center front line unless otherwise specified. So if she just says square, then yeah. So that's our neckline point. Okay. And now she's telling you to come up 1.5 from that line. So we're going to come up from that line 1.5, and that will be position 9, which is where we stop this kind of. So that's all to get one part of our neckline. So the way she says it is 9 is 1.5 centimeters up from the line squared from 1. So we already have 1, we've squared our line out. This is 1.5 up from it, and that is position 9. Now she says join 2 to 9 to 1, so we've joined 2 to 9, and we've and 1 is now this position here, and we. So this is now, the blue lines are our neckline now. No longer do we have that curved block neckline. This is our neckline. Draw the outline of revere as shown. Check shape by folding back along your break line. Okay, I've done this on the board, so I can't actually check it. But what she means is we're going to draw this shape on, and with your paper you can fold along your break line and mirror that so that you can see how it sits. So when I'm trying to draw this shape, I'm trying to look at her diagram of the pattern is handy to look at the depth that she's coming out, and just try and do your best to be similar to it. And you can always come back and change. So you can see where the button allowance line is, and imagine if that went up, we've got to come out, which it is, a little bit further, and then curve it in like that. There is a slight curve on that line. If you find slight curves hard, draw a straight line and then measure a slight curve from it. What she meant there is you can fold along here, and if I fold along there, I get a mirror image, say, coming here, And that gives you more of an idea of how it's going to sit on the garment. Oh, is that about right? Is that the right level for the lapel? Is that the right depth? Oh, maybe that's too wide. Maybe I'll come in a little bit more. Do you know? Something like that.
So it's a good checking point. Basically.
Yeah, it's a good checking point. That is the bodice draft, you see? There. Done. Now we need to get the rest of this collar. And we'll have several pieces to trace off then. And we will do a facing as well. So draw in collar 1, 9, 7, 8. So look up here and find our positions. I haven't even numbered them all. 1 is here, 9 is here, 7 is here, this point, and 8 was this point here, because 5 was that point. So we're going to come along here, but she doesn't give you any instruction for this point here, because that is a style line and you draw it in whichever way you want. Notice that that collar is slightly curved in. That's because it's sitting here on this point of the collar, shoulder. So I don't know if you can see it, but that's slightly curved in. All right, so because it's coming over here, and it's better that that's slightly curved in so it sits a little better on the shoulder. But again, you could draw a straight line to start with, it's easier, and then do a slight curve from it. Stick with green for my collar. I'm coming from position 9 up to 7. I've got 7 to 8. Now I got to get 8 to 1. So I'm going to come down and come like that in whatever shape I feel looks good and matches the diagram. So if you come like something like that, and you can look and say, oh, you know, is this space a little closer? I'm kind of making it that way so it doesn't interrupt my position 1 number there. Really, it's a little bit closer. So I'm going to come a little bit more like that. All right. And now say I'm going to curve that in slightly. And that's what I mean about sometimes drawing a straight line and then curving from it is a little easier than just randomly drawing a curve. It makes your curve more consistent. So that's the main part done. That's our collar piece in green with a little blue there, and then our bodice piece is mainly black with the blue bit here. We also need a facing because it's the same here. We have the jacket piece, but inside, and this bit that's showing is actually a facing. It's a small piece. So we need our small piece for this side of the collar, and then we need our big piece, the bodice piece, for this side. Then we need the 2 sides of this collar. We need this, which is our top collar, the collar that sits on the outside, and we need an under collar. The top collar has an extra layer, a little bit of extra few millimeters on it along the style line only, so that it will sit better. Okay, a bit like on our last draft. The same with the lapel. The facing of the lapel is the bit that's going to show. We want to add a few millimeters along here so that rolls back and our underneath isn't rolling out or our edge isn't seen. So we add, depending on the width of the thickness of the fabric. If it's thinnish fabric, just maybe 3 millimeters. If it's thick coat fabric, you'd add a whole 0.5 on there. So I'm going to do 0.5 because it's the kind of biggest and it looks best on the diagram. So you have to pick out where you're adding that. So you have to add it just to the style line, which is here and here, and then here and here. If it's easier, you can do that on your next step. On the last one, I only added that on the next step, which is fine. If you add it here, you are doing a little more work because you're adding it here, then you're also adding it on to the next, and it can be a little confusing. So I'm going to do that in red to represent where you put that on. And the difficulty being you trace along the red line for the facing and the blue line for the bodice. So in terms of our facing, I'm going to come out 0.5 again from position 2 on our shoulder, and from our center front, here and here. So that comes up, and that comes down to meet it in a nice curve. And so then we're going to draw in so when you shade in the facing, doesn't it make it a lot easier to pull it out as a separate piece? And remember, the shading represents something that's not on the front of the garment, it's in behind. The other thing is there's two collars, the top and the under collar. The under collar needs to get put on the bias straight of grain. So we change the straight of grain because the bias, as we know, stretches and sits, rolls easier. You leave the top collar on grain so it sits nice and holds its shape. If you had them both on the bias, it goes a little wiggly. But the underneath one being on the bias helps it sit better. Okay, so I have most of them traced off here. You can see there's a bodice piece, there is the facing piece, and then there's the top collar with the extra and the under collar. Notice there's notches, very important notches. Here is the notch point, and here at the shoulder. So that's your shoulder notch, and that's your kind of lapel notch. They're important, so when you're tracing off, do that. Also, you want to trace off your roll line, which is this, essentially, on my draft it's green here, and then it's going down into black. It's that shape. So it's a little bit, I think she might just say trace it off, but there isn't a lot of explanation. So, yeah, so you come along here. And this would be for the pressing, so that someone would know how to press it into the position. Okay. And then finally, you choose which is your this is your under collar because it doesn't have the extra on there on the style line, and this is the one that you do your bias grain line. So remembering the bias line is a 45-degree angle, so I cannot use this set square. It doesn't have a 45 on it. This has a 45-degree angle, and when I'm finding my bias line, I push one side along my center back line, and the other side will be a grain line. It doesn't matter which way really, any which way, but one side of this angle, that's 45 anywhere along your grain, and then you'll get a bias line going the other way. Well, okay. So this is your center back line, but in this case it's not your grain line. This is your center back line, but it is the grain line. And to help in terms of confusion, it might be good to put an actual straight grain going this way. And the last thing is the labeling. This is your top collar. Sorry, this is your top collar, this is your under collar. Top collar has the extra on it and has the grain line. It's your under collar. Doesn't have the extra, but has the bias grain line. Seam allowance goes right the way around everything. Here is your facing. It has the extra there on it. You've got your bodice traced off. Notice I have a very important notch matched in. That's that point there. Okay, so it's like a jigsaw. Remember, this has to fit to this, so this sews here, I've got to have that fitting. This fits here to there, so I've got to have those notches on here so that they match there. And the break line, so the break line needs to be marked in, and the roll line, and you can write on them. I've dotted them there just to kind of differentiate them. They're your pieces, seam allowance around everything for the final finishing.